Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video we got another off-season preview video here to discuss, looking at the Colorado Avalanche and the Vancouver Canucks, the two teams eliminated from the Western Conference in the second round. We'll look at what happened, what went wrong for them in the playoffs, look at their UFAs, RFAs, and draft capital for this upcoming off-season, and look at how they can improve in the off-season and get better, and ready to go on a more deeper playoff run next year. Well, there's all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to the video here at the Internet Talk channel. Before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you all for your support and able to help you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below and don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below so someone else discuss today's video. Now we're going to continue on with our off-season preview series here, looking at the Colorado Avalanche and the Vancouver Canucks, who are the two Western Conference teams eliminated in round 2. The Canucks had their ups in the second round. They were up 1-0, they were up 2-1, they were up 3-2, but eventually did wind up losing in 7 games to the Edmonton Oilers. The Avalanche, on the other hand, had a strong first game, came back, were able to get it, win in overtime, but then they lost 3 straight to Dallas and were never able to recover, lost in 6 games in double overtime to the Dallas Stars. So both these teams had really good runs. The Avalanche wound up being third in their division, finishing behind the Jets, who they beat, and the Stars, who they lost to. The Canucks, meanwhile, were the division winners in the Pacific Division in the regular season. I think they were second in the West in the regular season, and they wound up losing in the second round to the Edmonton Oilers. So go through these two teams here and see exactly what happened to them and how they can improve in the future. So we'll start with the Colorado Avalanche. 3 reasons why, in my opinion, why this Avalanche team could not beat the Stars. One, they lost their offensive touch. Now, a big part of this was due to the fact that Valeri Nichushkin was suspended for the next 6 months. He had been on a tear in the first round against the Winnipeg and also the first couple of games against Dallas. So with him being suspended without pay, that really hurt that team's offensive touch. But even more to that at points, McKinnon wasn't like the same. Besides the 1 Game 5, which Makar was absolutely fantastic, Makar wasn't overly great in this series. Their offensive touch really started to leave them after that first round, where they were scoring 5 goals after 5 goals after 5 goals, and it really did hurt that Avalanche team. So it was a big reason, in my opinion, why this Avalanche team was not able to get out of round 2. They lost their offensive touch, mainly because of Nichushkin, but even beyond Nichushkin, they lost Lehkonen at some point. Duran came back, but he wasn't the same after missing the first round due to injury, and these were a huge reason as to why the Avalanche team lost their offensive touch, and the main reason why they lost in the round 2 to the Dallas Stars. Next up, they had a bad PK, one of the worst PKs in the playoffs for the Colorado Avalanche. It was not an overly good PK. In the second round, their penalty kill was only 70.6, which was a really bad percentage, only ahead of the Dallas Stars, who they lost to, and the Vancouver Canucks. So their PK was not overly good in this playoffs, in the second round, and that was a major reason as to why they fell in the second round. Could not solve the Stars' power play, which was actually pretty good in the second round, and that was another major reason as to why this team wound up being eliminated. And 3, they dug themselves into too many holes. I mean, they were able to win Game 1, but they dug themselves into a 3-0 hole. They dug themselves into a 4-0 hole in Game 2. They were down, I think it was like 3 or 4-1 to the Dallas Stars in Game 4. They were down at multiple times, even though they won in Game 5. And even though they were up in Game 6, they wound up losing. So they dug themselves into way too many holes. They had to come back way too many times, and Dallas continued to take advantage of it. And as much as they blew the first game, they really quickly found out how to shut down the Avalanche's offense enough that they couldn't come back, and it was enough to shut down the Avalanche. So in my opinion, the fact that they lost their offensive touch, their bad PK, and the fact that they kept on digging themselves into holes were 3 main reasons, in my opinion, why the Avalanche were eliminated by Dallas Stars in round 2. Next, going over to the teams pending UFAs, RFAs, and draft capital for this upcoming offseason. UFA, they have a long list of guys, but no overly significant names on the list this year. You have forward Yakov Trenin, who had 12 goals, 17 points in 76 games with both the Avalanche and the Predators. Really good bottom 6 forward, probably will leave, maybe he can come back, but we'll have to wait and see. You have Brendan Duhaime, who had 5 goals and 13 points in 80 games with both the Wild and the Avalanche. Really good bottom 6 forward, could also see him come back, but wouldn't be surprised if he left. You have Andrew Cogliano, who had 6 goals and 19 points in 75 games. Probably leaves. Maybe he retires. We'll have to wait and see, but I'm not sure if he'll be back with Colorado. You have Jonathan Drouin, who had 19 goals and 56 points in 79 games. He's going to want to raise, but I wouldn't be overly shocked if he came back to join Colorado and remain with McKinnon. You have Joel Kiviranta and Fredrik Olsson, who both had 3 goals and 9 points. Kiviranta in 56 games, Olsson in 57. Both are decent depth options. Could see him be brought back. Could also see him go to free agency, so I'll have to wait and see on that. On the defensive end, you have Sean Walker, who had 10 goals and 29 points in 81 games with both the Flyers and the Avalanche combined. Decent second, third pair defensemen could see him be brought back. Could also see him walk as a free agent, which is probably more likely at this point. And then you also have Caleb Jones, who had 5 points in 25 games. Jack Johnson, who had 3 goals and 16 points in 80 games. And Brad Hunt, who had no points and no games. All are decent 6th, 7th defensemen. Could see all of them leave. Could see maybe 1 or 2 of them be back with the Avalanche. So we'll have to wait and see, but I wouldn't be overly shocked if 2 or 3 of those guys were gone by the Colorado Avalanche. And then you also have young goalie Ivan Prosvetov, who they acquired on waivers from the Coyotes before the season started, playing 11 games this year, had an .895 save percentage, 3.16 GAA. Wouldn't be surprised if he signed a small deal to be back as like the third string goaltender for the Avalanche. Also wouldn't be surprised if he went to free agency to try and test his luck elsewhere, so we'll have to wait and see on that. But those are pending UFAs for the Colorado Avalanche. If we look at the RFAs, very little amount of RFAs. They have Casey Milstead, who had 18 goals and 57 points in 80 games with both the Avalanche and the Sabres combined. Really good in the playoffs. I expect him to be brought back as like their second line center. You have Jason Paulin, who had a goal in 7 games played of NHL action this year. Looks like he eventually could be a solid third line forward for the Avalanche. I expect him to be brought back. And you have Giovanni Fairbrother, who was acquired in the offseason. Didn't play any NHL games, but looks like eventually could be a solid third pair defenseman, so I expect him to be brought back. So some decent pending RFAs for the Colorado Avalanche. If you look at their draft capital, they don't have a overabundance of draft capital, but they do have a couple of decent picks. They have their own first, they have their own fourth, they have both the Ducks and the Kraken's 5th, they have their own 6th, and then they have their 7th as well as the Predators' 7th. So they have a decent amount of draft picks. They have 7 picks in total, which isn't overly bad, but they only have won the first 3 rounds. So it's not overly ideal, and I think they would have rather have a little bit more draft capital, especially in the top end of the draft. But I think with the way it is right now, with them getting as far as they did, I think they're okay with having 7 picks. It's not an overly bad amount. It's just that there's a lot more in the later rounds than I think they would like there to be. So some interesting stuff there for the Avalanche. And lastly, 5 ways I can see the Avalanche improve in the offseason to get better and more ready for a deeper playoff run next year. One, they need to figure out the Landeskog situation. Will he be back at some point next year, or is he going to be another long-term injury reserve candidate for the rest of next year? Have to figure it out before the start of the offseason, because if they have $7 million more to work in cap space, they could definitely improve more on that roster. But if Landeskog's going to be back at some point next year, which it sounds like he wants to try and continue to do, he might even be ready for training camp, who knows, then that's going to leave them with $7 million that they're going to have to take off of LTIR. So there's a very likely chance that it really does depend on what happens, but there's a possibility Landeskog is back and his $7 million is going to count against the cap, or maybe he's still going to be injured next year and they'll be able to use $7 million more to try and improve this team. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there, but the Landeskog situation needs to be figured out. I need to add top 4 defensemen. They moved Bowen Byram at the trade deadline to add Casey Milstead. Sean Walker, in my opinion, is probably going to go to free agency, try and get the best deal he can, so he's probably not going to be back. So that really does leave a hole in the top 4 for the Colorado Avalanche. And I think they're going to try and add a top 4 defenseman. Now, they have a really good top pair of Taves and Makar, but I think they try and need to find someone who they can pair with maybe Josh Manson. So I looked at them probably looking at a left shot defense, maybe like a Brady Shea, Mario Ferraro on the trade front if they wanted to. There's probably a couple of other interesting guys on the free agent market and the trade market who would fit the bill of like a solid top 4 left shot defenseman who could be a partner for Josh Manson. So we'll have to wait and see, but I wouldn't be overly surprised if we saw the Avalanche try and target some top 4 defensive help this offseason. I think they need to consider extending Rantanen. He's a huge piece of that team. Had another 100-point season this year. He's an elite level winger, so I think they need to try and extend him. He's going to be eligible for an extension July 1st. I expect him to probably get an extension that's probably between $11.5 and $12 million, would be my guess personally. I don't think he'd surpass McKinnon's number, but I think he'd be pretty close to it. So I think there's a very likely chance that that's what happens with the Avalanche. So I wouldn't be overly surprised if Rantanen got a big extension. So that's another thing that the Avalanche need to take care of this offseason. If they need to rework their bottom 6, if you look at the team's bottom 6, most of their players who are in the bottom 6 right now are currently pending UFAs. So as we just talked about, Trenin, Duhaime, Cogliano, Kiviranta, Olofsson, Drouin. So there's a lot of decent bottom 6 players who are going to be entering free agent status. So if they need to really rework that bottom 6, they can bring back a couple of those guys who were here last year. Fantastic work for them. But if they can't, they need to go out on the free agent market, try and add some more bottom 6 help. Could go after a guy Kevin LeBanc, Victor Olofsson, could maybe try and improve via the trade market, maybe try and go after a guy like Andrew Mangiapane or Nikolai Ehlers. So I'm not exactly sure who they'll try and target, but I think adding and reworking that bottom six might be a big thing that they need to do this offseason. And lastly, add more depth at defense. On top of adding a top four defenseman, they have guys like Jack Johnson and Caleb Jones leaving the team now. So with that in mind, it seems like they're going to need some more depth at the defensive position, especially if both those guys wind up walking. So I wouldn't be overly surprised if we saw them add maybe 2 to 3 third pair defensemen who could definitely challenge for a third pair role, as they don't have an awful bunch of depth on their defensive core right now in the prospect pool. So I wouldn't be overly surprised if this team wound up making some adjustments to their defensive core and trying to add some more depth defensemen, maybe someone who are on the cheaper side of things with their cap situation, but I do expect them to try and improve their defense a little bit. So we'll have to wait to see exactly what happens there, but that's my opinion on the Colorado Avalanche. Those are 3 reasons why I think this team wound up being eliminated by the Dallas Stars in round 2. Those are the RFAs, UFAs, and draft capital for this upcoming offseason, and those are the 5 ways I can see this team improve in the offseason to get better and ready for next year and maybe go on a deeper playoff run. Next, going over to the Vancouver Canucks. Now for the Canucks, 3 reasons why I think they were eliminated by the Edmonton Oilers in the second round. 1, they had insuperior special teams. The Oilers all day, all the time, had a way better special teams unit than the Vancouver Canucks. Now, given the fact we already know the Oilers have went to the Cup final, the only time the Oilers were able to give up a power play goal was to the Canucks. They were perfect against the Kings. They were perfect against the Stars. The Canucks were the only team to find some clinks in the armor of the Edmonton Oilers penalty kill unit. So I give them credit for that. They found a way to get the penalty kill going, and that was really good news there for the Canucks. But if you look at the team overall, it was not overly great. The power play in the second round was 13%, which is one of the lowest in the second round. Only have the Eastern Conference Bruins and Canes. On top of that, the penalty kill was second lowest in the second round, only ahead of the Dallas Stars. So it was not a great penalty kill, it was not a great power play, and the Oilers completely dominated on special teams. The Canucks actually had some pretty good jobs stopping the Oilers' power play. They held the power play to respectable numbers given they're the Edmonton Oilers, and the power play wasn't overly bad, but still it was not enough to crack the Edmonton Oilers special teams, and the special teams being insuperior was a main reason in my opinion why the Canucks were eliminated. 2, ran out of gas and were banged up. I mean, that National Series, as much as it was only a 6-game series, took a toll on the Vancouver Canucks, and then by the time they got to the Edmonton Oilers, you could see that they were starting to run out of gas. Esser was injured. Demko, like we said, wasn't even the starter at that point in time. It seemed like Hughes was injured. Pedersen was injured. At some points, it seemed like some of their star players were really banged up, and I think that was another major reason. They just weren't as healthy as the Edmonton Oilers down the stretch, and I think that was a major reason as to why I wound up being eliminated by the Oilers. And 3, Pedersen and Hronek were not really huge factors in this playoffs this year. Pedersen, I think, only got like 2 or 3 goals. Hronek got 1 goal, and that was in Game 7, and neither were very huge pieces of that team. I mean, Hronek was decent, but Zadorov and Hughes were way better than him. Pedersen was alright, but Besser, Miller, the entire Joshua, Garland, Lindholm line were really good. So Pedersen and Hronek not stepping up are another reason, in my opinion, why this Canucks team wound up being eliminated by the Edmonton Oilers. They need those 2 guys to step up and contend, and they didn't really do that in the playoffs. So in my opinion, the fact that Hronek and Pedersen did not step up, the fact that they ran out of gas, were banged up really hard towards the end of that series, and the fact that they had insuperior special teams to the Edmonton Oilers were main reasons, in my opinion, why this Canucks team wound up being eliminated by them in the second round. Going over to the UFAs, RFAs, and draft capital for his team for this upcoming offseason. Now, if you look at the UFA side, tons of UFAs on this team. You have Elias Lindholm, who had 15 goals and 44 points in 75 games. Canucks would love to bring him back, but it seems like he's priced himself out of Vancouver, so he's probably gone. You have Teddy Bluger, who had 6 goals, 28 points, 68 games. With the Canucks, he looked fantastic. I wouldn't be surprised if he was brought back. You have Sam Lafferty, who had 13 goals and 24 points in 79 games. Decent bottom 6 forward. I think he might be leaving. You had Dakota Joshua, who had 18 goals and 32 points in 63 games. Once again, Canucks would probably love to bring him back. Once again, he might have priced himself out of Vancouver. You also have Sheldon Dries, who had no points in no NHL games, but is a decent call-up option because he can be brought back. On the defensive end, you have Tyler Myers, who has 5 goals and 29 points in 77 games. Looks like it could be still a really good third-pair defenseman and might take a pay cut to remain in Vancouver, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was brought back. You have Nikita Zadorov, who had 6 goals and 20 points in 75 games, but looked fantastic fantastic in the playoffs. Once again, another guy who I think the Canucks would love to keep, but might price himself out of Vancouver. You have Ian Cole, who had 2 goals, 11 points, 78 games. Did not look overly good in the playoffs. Wouldn't be surprised if he was gone. You also have Mark Friedman, who had an assist in 23 games. Decent depth defenseman, could be gone, could see him be brought back on a cheap deal, so have to wait and see on that. And you have Casey DeSmith, who had 29 games played this year, an .895 save percentage, 2.89 GAA. Not overly bad, but I think with the emergence of Seelovs, DeSmith will probably be let go. So I have a lot of interest in pending UFAs for the Canucks. If we look at pending RFAs, not too much here. Definitely not anything hugely significant. I have Ian McDonough, who had no points in no games, and Linus Karlsson, who had no points in 4 games. Both look to be future forwards there for the Canucks, so I expect both those guys to be brought back. You also have Cole McWard, who had a game of NHL action this year, no points. Jet Wu, who had no points, no games of NHL action this year. Both, I think, could eventually be third pair defensemen, so I wouldn't be surprised if both those guys were brought back. You have Philip Hronek, who had 5 goals and 48 points in 81 games. Really good top 4, maybe even top pair right shot defenseman, but with the price he's looking at, I wouldn't be surprised if he was dealt by the Vancouver Canucks, so I wouldn't expect Hronek to be brought back. And you also have Archer Seelovs, who had 4 games played of NHL action, an .881 save percentage, and a 2.47 GAA. He's looked pretty good, especially in the playoffs. He was a lot better in the playoffs, and I think that Seelovs is definitely going to get an extension, and he's also going to be the backup next year for the Vancouver Canucks. So interesting stuff there. I feel the Canucks draft capital, not a whole bunch here. They have no first round pick this year, no second round pick this year. They have their own 3rd and 4th. They have no 5th round pick. They have theirs and the Sharks' 6th round pick, and they have their own 7th round pick. So they have no 5th, 1st, or 2nd round pick in this year's draft. They do have an extra 6th round pick, which is going to be extremely high given the fact it's from San Jose. So that's really good news there for them, but still, only 5 picks and none in the top 2 rounds is really bad there for the Canucks, and I know that they were able to get to the 2nd round, and after missing the playoffs for so long, that was a really good step forward for them. It's still not overly great to have not too much draft capital for this upcoming offseason, so it's really bad stuff there for the Canucks, but they do have a couple of later round draft picks and mid round draft picks, so that's really good stuff there for Vancouver. And lastly, 5 ways I can see this Canucks team improve in the offseason to get better and maybe go into a deeper playoff run next year. Number 1 is how many UFAs can this team wind up keeping? They want to probably keep as many UFAs as they possibly can. It sounds like they want to keep Lindholm, Joshua, Zadorov, and Myers. Well, it sounds like they want to keep all 4 of those guys. They probably won't be able to keep all of them, so I do really expect a couple of those guys to leave, but I mean, Lindholm's probably looking for around 8, maybe 8.5, 9 million. I don't think the Canucks are willing to do that. Joshua, it sounds like, is looking for 3.5, 4 million. Don't expect the Canucks to do that. You have Zadorov, who sounds like he's looking for around 6 million. I don't expect the Canucks to do that. You have Myers, who seems like the only one who's willing to take a pay cut to stay in Vancouver, so I expect Myers to be back, but it'll be interesting to see which ones, or if any of them, of Zadorov, Lindholm, and Joshua are going to be able to stay in Vancouver, so we'll have to wait and see on that. But I think one of their biggest questions is going to be seeing how many UFAs they can possibly keep who are on this playoff run with them. 2, I think they need to move on from potentially Mikheyev and definitely Hronek. Hronek's looking for $8 million. They don't want to pay anyone more than Quinn Hughes. If Hronek won't budge from that $8 million asking price, I think there's a very likely chance he gets dealt. I think they can get a 2nd round pick and a really good prospect for him, so I think they could definitely pull off a really good trade. And not exactly sure where he would be the best fit for, but I think at $8 million ask, he's not going to get that from Vancouver, so I'm not exactly sure if he's going to be able to get that from anywhere else either, but I think there would be a couple of teams who would be interested in it, so we'll have to wait and see on that, but I definitely expect Hronek to be moved. Mikheyev, there's been some talk about moving him, some talk about buying him out. He's a decent middle 6 forward, but it's really not looked overly good since arriving in Vancouver, and with the fact that they need some more cap space, I wouldn't be overly surprised if he was moved or bought out, so we'll have to wait and see on that, but I definitely do expect the Canucks to try and move some of these guys, either Mikheyev and or Hronek. On top of that, they need to add 1 to 2 top 4 defensemen, especially if guys like Zadorov and Hronek are gone. Those are 2 really good top 4 defensemen. If those 2 guys are gone, they're going to need some more top 4 defensemen. I've seen them be linked to a guy like Brett Pesce, who could be a really good piece. Could they be interested in a guy like Shane Goss to spare? They were interested in Carrier at the deadline. Could they have some interest in him? Could they go on the trade market, try and get someone? Maybe a Matthias Samuelsson or a Connor Murphy or something like that. Not exactly sure who they'll try and target, but if they aren't able to bring back Zadorov and they do wind up trading Hronek, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to add some more top 4 defensemen to this group. Next, I think they need to add some more youth. I'm not exactly sure who that will be, but I could see Paul Colson be a full-time NHLer next year. Wouldn't be overly shocked if we saw Lekari Mackey at least get a stint at the NHL level, but if he looks like he's an NHL ready. Maybe Mikheyev gets to step into the NHL lineup next year. On the defensive end, could the guys like Cole McWard and Akito Heroes, who were college free agent signings a couple of years ago, maybe step into the NHL lineup next year? I think it's a possibility. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there. But I think McWard, Heroes, Pakolsman, and Mikheyev could be guys who step into the lineup next year to provide some more youth to this team. And lastly, I think they need to add some more top 9 forwards, especially if they lose guys like Lindholm, Joshua, Lafferty on the forward group. I think they're definitely going to need some more forward depth. Even if they are able to keep Luger, I think there's definitely going to be some need to add some more forward depth and add some more top 9 forwards. Not sure who they'll try and target. There's a lot of decent pending UFAs on the free agent market. They could try and use some of their depth draft capital to try and add some more pieces on the trade market. So I'm not exactly sure which route they'll go, but I wouldn't be overly surprised if we saw them add maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 top 9 forwards, especially if guys like Elias Lindholm, Dakota Joshua, and Sam Lafferty wound up leaving this offseason. So I'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there. But that's my opinion on the Vancouver Canucks. Those are 3 reasons I think they were eliminated by the Edmonton Oilers in round 2. Those are the pending UFAs, RFAs, and draft capital for this upcoming offseason. And those are the 5 ways I can see this team improve in the offseason to get better and be more competitive, maybe go on a deeper playoff for next year. So that's my opinion on those 2 teams. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. What do you think about the Avalanche and the Canucks? Do you agree with me? And are those reasons why those teams will end up being eliminated in round 2? What do you think about their UFAs, RFAs, and draft capital for this upcoming offseason? And what do you think these 2 teams could do in the offseason to try and improve to get better for next year? Do you agree with me, or do you think they should do something else? Definitely love to hear your guys' thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. So I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you'd like to subscribe down below. Thank you all for your support and able to with all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below so we can all discuss in today's video. I also have a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. Leave a link in the description below, and I can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.